Dwight David Howard. This 6'10 center remains as one of the most highly debated former All-Stars that the league has ever seen. Some believe he was overhyped and overrated, and some think he was one of the greatest centers of all time. When it comes to this player, there seems to be no happy medium, as everyone continues to take extreme stances on his talent and legacy. So where do I stand? Just how good was Dwight Howard really? As someone who witnessed the various stages of his career, I'll do my best to answer that, but as usual with this series, let's take it back to the very beginning of his career. In 2004, Dwight Howard was selected with the first overall pick in the NBA draft by the Orlando Magic. He was a hyped prospect who decided to skip college and go directly to the NBA thanks to the influence of his childhood role model, Kevin Garnett. Many of the players who entered the NBA directly out of high school often struggled to have a productive impact in their first couple seasons in the league. But this wasn't the case for Howard. Even as a 19-year-old, he already had a stronger and more athletic basketball body than most of the players in the league at that time. The Magic team that he joined only won 21 games before the arrival of Howard, and in his rookie season, he helped improve the team by 15 wins. In his rookie year, he put up 12 points, 10 rebounds, and 1.7 blocks on 52% shooting. Sure, that might sound tame relatively, but you have to remember the context that this was a player straight out of high school. In that rookie campaign, Dwight became the youngest player to ever average a double-double, and he also became the youngest player to have averaged at least 10 rebounds in a season. But obviously, that's not the best we'd see from Howard. Over the next few years, his abilities would continue to improve, as he developed into arguably the best combination of power and athleticism in the NBA at that time. By the 2008 to 2009 season, Howard had officially reached his prime, as he was scoring 20 points, snagging 14 rebounds, and 3 blocks on 57% shooting. He was a league-leading rebounder, getting at least 20 rebounds 10 times throughout the regular season. But his greatest gift was likely his all-time great rim protection, as Howard's tremendous quickness and leaping ability allowed him to swat plenty of shots that would have been out of reach for most centers. For this year-long effort, he was rewarded as the 2009 Defensive Player of the Year, but that was only the beginning. Over the next few seasons, Howard would continue to put up similar averages. From 2009 to 2011, he won the NBA's Defensive Player of the Year, and that 3-season streak is the longest DPOY streak in NBA history. The crazy thing is that many people believe that he should have won the award for a 4th straight season, but voter fatigue was likely a factor in why they gave the award to Tyson Chandler instead of Dwight Howard. But make no mistake, Howard had more blocks, more steals, more defensive rebounds, more defensive win shares, and a better defensive plus-minus. Regardless of the amount of awards he ended up winning, you can't really debate the fact that Howard was easily the best defensive player for an era of NBA basketball. From 2008 to 2013, Howard won a whopping 5 rebounding titles in a span of 6 years, as he was clearly the best rebounder in the game. Now here's the thing. With all of his dominance in multiple aspects, some people might start to think that Howard was a player without weakness, and arguably the best player in the game overall. Well, I would argue that he could have been, if it wasn't for one glaring weakness. Dwight was not a great scorer overall, and he was a bit limited with his post moves. The best way to defend Howard was to keep him outside of the paint, and keep his back to the basket. He wasn't a good jump shooter, he didn't have very good dribbling skills, and he really could have benefited from a better jump hook shot. These were the frequent criticisms during his career, and those critiques were not because people thought Howard was a bad player, but it was because people believed he had the potential to be the best player in the game if he expanded his scoring capabilities. Some of you might look at Howard's stats and think that these offensive criticisms are not legitimate. For example, in 2010, Howard averaged 18 points per game while leading the league in field goal percentage, hitting 61.2% of his shots. The thing is, Howard was very selective with his shooting, as he looked to score most often with his putback dunks and in pick and roll plays. but he wasn't very good at making a play for himself out of isolation situations. This is why he wasn't always aggressive on offense, and in the 2010 season, he only attempted 10.2 shots per game. LeBron, Kobe, Durant, Carmelo Anthony, and Monte Ellis all nearly attempted twice as many shots per game. Although Howard was recognized as a top 10 or even a top 5 player, he was 76th overall in total field goal attempts over the 2010 season. Even role players like Carl Landry and Corey Brewer shot the ball nearly 100 more times than Howard did over the course of the season, which really puts the criticism into perspective. So maybe he wasn't the stereotypical championship leader, but at least in the right situation, Howard could find himself on a roster where he was competing for a title as the best player on his team. He found himself in that situation in the 2009 postseason. Surrounding Dwight was an array of lethal three-point shooters who were able to alleviate most of the offensive load. Shooters like Rashard Lewis, Hedo Turkoglu, and JJ Redick. Add in two solid rotating point guards in Jameer Nelson and Rafer Alston, and it starts to make sense why this team that perfectly complemented each other made it all the way to the NBA Finals. At that point, they were clearly outgunned by the better Lakers team, as the Orlando Magic were defeated in just 5 games, and that was the closest a prime Dwight Howard would ever get to leading his team to a championship. So if I had to summarize what kind of player Dwight Howard was on the Orlando Magic, I would describe him as the player who had the talent and potential to be one of the select few greatest players of all time. But the execution limited him to being at best a top 5 player in the NBA during his prime. From an individual perspective, the 2012 to 2013 season was when Dwight's career started to head south. The Lakers shook the basketball world when they traded their championship-winning center, Andrew Bynum, for the 27-year-old superstar, Dwight Howard. The thing is, the Lakers thought they were getting an all-time great center just as he was hitting the prime of his career. But the truth is, they got him right as he was beginning his decline. You see, leading up to that offseason, Howard had major offseason back surgery, and from that point on, he never really regained his insane explosiveness from his more youthful days in Orlando. He remained a solid defender and a top rebounder for a while, but it was obvious that he lost a few steps on the athletic front. That Lakers season ended in disaster as Kobe Bryant tore his Achilles at the age of 34, and Dwight Howard ultimately decided to leave in free agency. With this, a new chapter of Dwight's career had begun, one where he had turned into a journeyman and was perceived by many as a drama queen and a locker room cancer. With that being said, Dwight remained a statistically reliable double-double player for 5 years after he left Los Angeles. At a certain point, the perception of Howard began to change, right about the same time that the expectations for him began to change. Once people started to accept that he would never be the championship leader that they thought he was capable of, and instead could embrace a role as simply a contributing complementary player on a contending team, people started to view him as a desirable player in the league. After short stints in Atlanta, Charlotte, and Washington, Dwight found his way back to Los Angeles, signing with the team in 2019. With leading stars like LeBron James and Anthony Davis on the roster, a 34-year-old Howard was able to thrive as a solid spark off the bench. His rebounding, his rim protection, and his lob finishing were all tremendously impactful bonuses for his team. As you all know, the Lakers went on to win the 2020 NBA championship, as Dwight secured his first and only championship ring of his roller coaster career. So in conclusion, just how good was Dwight Howard really? To me, he was one of the best players of his era. ESPN had the audacity to rank him as the second best player in 2011, and even then, I thought that was a little generous. But for me, he was definitely a top 5 player at his peak, who had the potential to be one of the greatest centers in basketball history. But due to his lack of solid post moves, his lack of aggression, and his inability to create his own shot, that was a potential that he simply never reached. So what do you guys think? How good was Dwight Howard in your own words? I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments section below. Thanks for watching as always. Make sure to like and subscribe for more basketball content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.